if we're ready, I'll go ahead and call the tonight's Board of Health meeting to order. January 23rd, 2024, 6 p.m. In attendance, Kim Buccini, who's sitting in for Jim, who is out today for this meeting. Matt Gagner, Kathleen Stanley, Catherine Beer. Did I already mention you, Andrew? There's so many people. Andrew Golis, Town Administrator. So we'll get right on to the acceptance of the prior meeting minutes for December 19th, 2023. Do I have a motion for that?
I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from the December 19th, 2023 Board of Health meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed. New business.
Signed and sealed.
Thank you. Maynard Field Snack Shack Tight Tank.
Say that 5 times.
Yeah, I know. We have a couple of folks here in attendance. Just to back up a little bit, this has been brought up, I think, at 2 meetings. Does that sound right? 2 meetings?
We officially kind of talked about it last meeting, and we kicked the can about a couple of meetings ago. Yeah, a couple of
Right.
meetings. Yeah.
So as far as I recall, I believe the issue was getting a tight tank put in there versus a septic system. And I believe also at the last meeting, Jim had stated, because he's been working with the engineer, why can't I think of
Chris
his name?
McClure.
Chris McClure, McClure Engineering, Route 20. And there was some talk about possibly changing the plan, and the final main concern, I guess, was the fact that it was not going to be to code. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Am I missing something?
So if I'll chime in from my
Yeah, sure. Go
understanding of it too. So there's a multiple of things going on down there. Andrew, jump in if when need be. But they want to put up a new building, basically an expansion, or a new building for their needs down there. Primarily, it's football fields down there, seasonal. Every now and then there's a different event down there. Mostly when there's an event there, it's for parking only, not necessarily to use the facilities. But there was talk about putting up a new building, and then it came into conversation about, first of all, the water, what to do with the water. There's a good supply of water right there, but we would talk in the fact that if there's X amount of people over X amount of events, that now it's public water supply, and which is it's just more money, more work, more everything when it's public water supply. I don't think it's a public water supply. I don't think it meets the right criteria for that. Jim Philbrook kind of thought it may. So that was one of the issues that we had to kind of get to the bottom of. And then there's also the talk about putting in a tight tank or a full-blown septic system with a leach field and all that, which I know is, we have this conversation to discuss, which I think may be in the palms of the engineering. And then I think lastly, for our concerns, there was maybe even a grease trap that was on the table for discussion as well. So that's, Andrew, I don't know.
Yeah, I know right now we're kind of trying to figure out the best way to handle the construction of the replacement building. Our primary goal is to address the ADA issues, and that's going to be the first thing that we do. And I think what we'll do is do it as like a 2-phase project, where phase 1 is going to be the ADA access and prepping a pad with the appropriate steps for water and any other utilities that are at the existing building. And then the phase 2 will be procuring some sort of building to go on top of that pad, and looking at kind of where the budget is to determine whether or not we could include bathrooms, whether or not that would include any sort of facilities. But we know that if there's water being brought in there, some sort of sink, we're going to have to handle the discharge in some way. And we're just not 100% sure yet if that's going to include bathrooms, or if we'll just essentially build it out that it'll be the buildings with the porta potties on the pad and just have to address the water from the sink, or how big it is. I think it really depends on what the cost comes back in on that phase 1 project to address the ADA issue. So we're putting the tight tank before the board to say this is a possibility that we're going to need to address the handling of whatever discharge water we do have to go, because we already know that trying to go cross country to doing a to connecting into the sewer is just gonna be totally cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
And the, I believe it was brought up also about the possibility of a leach field, and because of the high water table, it would be
Right.
large, very expensive.
Yeah, we're right up against the wetlands right there, so you really have a challenge with trying to get the appropriate infiltration.
All right.
So,
So Chris McClure is working on this. I'm assuming also our engineer for Tom is also involved somewhat with this. Has he reviewed the plans?
So my understanding, and it's in the minutes from last week, but last meeting, but Tom was not on board with the tight tank.
Okay.
Is my understanding.
Yeah.
I haven't really had the opportunity to sit with him, or our board to sit with him, to see why he is opposed to it. I know we just allowed one for Bay Path for their recreation field.
Correct, yeah.
I don't think they actually used it. I think their funding went kaput before they got that tight tank in that we approved for them. But we did give them the opportunity for that, and I'd be pretty interested to see why in this scenario we would not allow a tight tank for this. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, I just don't understand at this point why you would say no on that.
Is the best course of action maybe to get, Tom's in Florida still, isn't he?
I think, John, that if this is back in review with McLaren, is that where it is, Andrew?
yeah, so that's why we're kind of looking at this as two separate phases, because we really don't want to, we've been pushing this ADA project off for quite a while, and, the Architectural Access Board really wants to see some progress made on it. So if we're able to at least prep the site, and, site prep may not include putting the tight tank in, but at least just putting a pad in to say, all right, when we do order the building, it's gonna go here, and then if we have to, core drill into the site or come out to the back, we'll do it then, but looking at it almost as like two separate projects, assuming that, if we do the ADA work and, they could still utilize the building that's there, in the meantime until we kind of get everything squared away.
Through the chair.
Yes.
So at this point, is there a plan that has been submitted and said this is basically potential what we have, or is it back in the drawing board on the engineer's desk saying, well, we gotta rework it?
So the ADA access path with the pad, I have plans from Chris basically saying like this is the plan. He hasn't drawn out where a tight tank would be or anything like that, but
Okay.
at least that layout of the new path and the location have been identified.
Okay. Jonathan?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, to me, I'm thinking that if we see, even if it's a tentative plan from McClure saying this is what we have proposed, tight tank here, this, we can at least take that to our septic guy, Tom, and say, Tom, this is what they're proposing, and get explanation why or why not he's on board with that.
I believe right now we're just in conceptual phase with the tight tank part. We just know that, all right, here's where the building is, here's the general size of the pad that we're gonna need, but everything else is the access point. So.
Yeah, from what limited understanding I know about this project, I'm all for it, seeing it move forward. It's for a great cause, and I don't want, personally, obviously it's gotta be done right and done legally, but I don't want to see this thing get blown financially out of proportion and then they get nothing out of the deal either. Like it's, I had a conversation prior to you about those particular porta potties down there, and that they couldn't be there, and then up at the other ball field, but then they kept them locked because kids were going in and vandalizing, and it was a whole. And then they didn't have porta potties up there, so then we put them up there, but we weren't supposed to. So I understand it's a sensitive, game that we all have to be in compliance with and all that. But I just, I, as far as the tight tank goes, just conceptually, I'm all for it. I don't see why we wouldn't, especially if there's a high water table right there. It probably is the right option for that.
And it's seasonal. You fellas who are here in the audience, you're obviously, I see your football attire, so you're probably
Right.
the most knowledgeable about this. Can you give me roughly an estimate of how many days that the current field is used
Yes,
roughly?
sir. I've been working this for the last 5 years as the vice president and the safety officer for the organization.
Okay.
And just watch this thing kick, and we provided Andrew plans. We provided plans before that, and I don't know what happened, and building change and everything, and then we got back with Andrew. He visited the site. But we start, for football, we start using that mid-June, and then, that's only once or twice for equipment handouts and everything. But in July, just before school goes back, we start. And we're down there with 8 football teams, 30 kids apiece, plus parents, 5 nights a week.
Okay.
So we use it extensively.
Can I ask that? Wanna hop in? So when you say that, like, what you said, 8 teams, are they there all at the same time, or is team A and B there on
We've got-
Monday? Team.
For the first 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
we have 1, 2, 3, we have 5 teams there, and then we use 3 teams behind Heritage School.
Okay.
So we have 5 teams there, and then 3 teams up at Heritage, because there's just not enough space. But
So
then you've
that's-
got all the parents and everybody,
Couple hundred people.
a couple of hundred folks,
Okay.
and then we also use the top Maynard field, right there on 31, and then we don't use the game field because we don't want to tear it up. But we use the field right behind it, the little field, and then the one down, what we call the pit, down in there. So we're spread out all across that. And during that first 3 weeks of our season is our preconditioning weeks and our pre-weeks before the season starts. Once the season starts and school starts, then we'll have 5 teams there, 3 nights a week. We're only allowed 3 nights a week for practice. But prior to that, before us starting, soccer has now been using that field on a consistent basis for their seasons during the summer and fall just before we start. And lacrosse has inquired about it a couple of times. And then we have an adult football league, Frisbee football, that has inquired about using that field also. Diane would be able to inform you all of what all those other requirements are, her and Sherry.
Yes, ma'am.
So
So when you
they don't use our buildings, but they use the fields.
when you kick it off for the beginning of the season, you said July, August,
Yes, sir.
And
We're
you-
there till December.
and you have all the action, the 5 teams or the 8 teams or whatever it is down there with this 200 people. Is the concession stand open? Are you selling product?
The only time we sell concessions and the snack shack is open is on game days.
On
And
game
that's,
days.
that's anywhere from 5 to 8 Saturdays during that season, and that's it.
So for us, as a board, John, if I may, it's very important for us to know the usage of the facility itself,
Yes,
the
sir.
kitchen, the water usage, the washing of dishes, the toilet flushes. This is what we're concerned with.
Yes, sir.
So,
On a
like the
typical-
picture you presented makes it look like
It's
it's
huge.
huge.
And it's not.
But at this point, the use, we would probably be able to say, toilets, those are gonna be used by probably 200 people have the opportunity to use
200,
those.
300 people on a game day Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and up to 500, 600 when all teams are home. And that's one time, maybe twice during the season, during that 7-week period of August through November.
But the water usage
Is going to be only on those 7 days,
on
for 7, 8 days,
on game days.
on game days. Other than that, it's not used.
I'm just trying to make an argument one way or the other about the public water supply, because that's a big deal.
To me, a public water supply would not be needed. We already have a well that's on site. That thing runs year round. It's running right now, coming up through that well cap.
Well,
It leaks and runs.
with a public water supply, your existing well becomes a public water supply. It's a
Okay.
name. It's not a new well.
Okay?
It's paperwork and permits and DEP, but it's
Okay.
not necessarily a new hookup. It's now talking about the usage of the existing well.
Okay.
So, private or public is basically the 2 choices.
And it belongs to the town anyway, so.
Yeah, so it's just if we can keep a straight face and really say this is not meeting the criteria of public water supply, that's a big step. That's a big step for your whole project as a whole. Dollar for dollar for the town, because they have to look at that expense, because it's testing's what, quarterly, John, reporting? I mean,
I
it's
think so.
it's a whole nother level of paperwork with the state
And the expense.
and the expense and all that, and I know the town's gonna wanna look at that, and that did come up in conversation. So that's why I'm saying when we're painting the picture of the usage, and I know even in the concession stands, everything's bottled water. So even with the 7 days usage, it's not, people aren't showering, you know,
No.
so, but that's just my own knowledge and just trying to
Right.
understand that aspect of
The,
this
the
project.
biggest thing we have is washing hands, because we do run our grills.
Mhm.
And, you know, we serve a whole plethora of, you know, hot dogs, hamburgers and all that. They're cooked on the grills out back, so we're constantly washing hands. Other than that, there's no public water usage unless we put in the bathrooms where folks are down there washing, you know, and using the bathroom and washing their hands afterwards. So,
And I think that that's where we're kind of looking at the metrics with the bathrooms, you know, in terms of cost to build the bathrooms and then the maintenance of the, you know, the tight tank itself. You know, whether or not it makes the most sense, you know, you gotta maintain the bathrooms, especially if there's 200 people using them a day. You have to make sure they're upkept. Whether or not it's most beneficial to prep an area for porta potties to be located or to build bathrooms. It's kind of what we're going back and forth with right now.
Do you know, and I don't know the answer, but do you know what Bond Road setup is? They have flushable toilets down there. Is that a septic? Or is that a tight tank there?
I'm not sure off the top of my
No, I
head.
don't know.
I want to say it's a septic, a leach field system, because right outside of the door is like this area and it's kind of cornered off, so. And I don't see exposed caps where you may see the tank, but, and,
No.
and I don't know what that is servicing as far as, you know, people as well. 100 maybe?
It's a pretty high volume down
It's
there.
pretty high volume
My
down
kids play
there.
soccer down there, yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty high
Between
volume.
soccer and baseball. And I've been
Yeah.
with soccer, baseball, and football since I've been here, last 10 years. And they get pretty high usage there. Ours is seasonal, just like theirs is, but because they have the soccer and baseball co-located at the same time,
Right.
that's a lot of usage down there.
So, I guess my question is though, it's a similar setup. I don't know about the usage, but like the soccer fields have their own porta potties out there. Because typically the baseball is locked up unless there's baseball action going on.
Correct, yep.
So, I'm more concerned about the public water supply. If they, do you know, Andrew, if they deem Bond Road public water supply or private?
I'm not sure.
I think we could use that as a template though and say, listen, Bond Road's
Agreed.
private. I
Yeah.
feel like this is private. We want to keep it as a private water supply because it's going to keep the cost down. It's better
Absolutely.
for everybody. And the reality
The
is,
soccer,
you
owned
probably
Bond
don't
Road.
meet the criteria for
And
public
not the
water
town,
supply.
right?
We
Right,
probably
that's-
don't because of usage.
Yeah.
Owned by
Yeah,
the
so
town,
that'll
yeah.
take some
And soccer.
additional research, it sounds like.
Yeah. But my 2 cents, John, in recap is let's see what Chris McClure sends back to us as far as an engineering prints, and then I don't think we have a choice but to perhaps table it till we see more paperwork from the engineer.
Yeah.
Because our original program, our project, since we started, was the slab with the building and to maintain our porta pots. To just demolish the current building, because Andrew can attest to this, he's been in there. It is literally falling down around our ears. And that is our huge moneymaker in revenue. And we use that revenue for equipment, and uniforms and everything else. And that, the Snack Shack alone on a good weekend will pay for all the referees and the EMT that has to be there. And still have excess left over, you know, to help with the equipment and stuff by the end of the season. Because that building needed to be demolished, and that's where the well pump is at, and the well tank comes up into that building. And it was supposed to be demolished, add a small room to keep that corner there, because that's also what feeds the field for the sprinkler system. And then, you know, just keep the porta pots. And then it got all exploded again to add the bathrooms for ADA compliance, this, that, and the other, so we redesigned the building to add them. And now we're here going back to possibly not. As long as we get a new functional building that's gonna support these boys and girls, because we have cheerleaders also, for the next 10, 20 years versus that building that was built 20 years ago that's falling down. A good building that's gonna support these kids and these programs, that's what we're looking for. And to be the ADA compliant, because we know by now the town is in trouble with the state and everybody else for not complying to ADA compliance. And it's not just our building. There's all kinds of other things down there that we've discussed with Andrew that'll have to be further phases on. But just getting access down into the field and that new building built, if we can go private water and keep that well as it is and just tap it in, or set the slab later on like Andrew has expressed, add bathrooms later, that's what we're looking for, is to get the town within ADA compliance and have a building that can support these kids.
Referencing the meeting minutes from our last meeting, you know, we did say back then as well that we'd like Chris McClure to attend a meeting, explain it, and then also hear a formal opinion from Tom Purcell. So I would, you know, I agree with everything that is being said, but that being said, I really would like to hear from both of them before we you know, I agree. Having a private water supply and being in support of these programs is truly super important to me, but I just want to kind of hear from the experts before we decide exactly what, you know, our weigh-in is.
Yeah.
So, that being said, should we table this? Do I have a motion to table it until the next meeting? We can put it on the next meeting. You gentlemen obviously are more than welcome to attend. I don't know, Kim, if we can ask Chris McClure to be here for that, if he's got something. He might say, no, I'm still, you know, going back and forth with the state or whatever, but if he's got something, I'd like to see him at the meeting, if at all possible. Tom's still in Florida until what? The snow all melts and...
Probably. He does have backup if need be. Julie
Okay.
could come and cover
Well-
for him or whatnot. But even these questions, Tom doesn't have to be here. We
Right,
could
I
have a
agree.
teleconference.
Yep, yeah, he can,
Yep.
he's already reviewed whatever's been out there, and I'm sure he's got something either written or at the top of his head, and he can express his
3 minutes.
concerns.
So I'd be willing to make a motion that we table this. I want to table it until we have at least the prototype engineered plans from McClure Engineering. Hopefully it's our next meeting.
Okay?
But if he's not ready at the next meeting, we'll have to try and get on him to make it happen. But I would table this conversation till we have the set of plans, engineered plans that we're looking for to make a better decision.
Are you suggesting then that we not put it as an agenda item, or leave it as an agenda item and we skip over it if Chris McClure doesn't have something for us?
Let's put it, yeah, exactly, John, that's a good idea. We'll put
Okay.
it on,
Leave it on.
tell Chris he's
the
gotta
next
be here
meeting?
with it, and put the pressure on, because it's gonna be spring again.
Yeah,
It's already spring again, and we gotta,
almost. It will be this week.
And
Later
if our
this
spring
week.
football league takes off again like it did last year, we could have kids down there this spring.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because now we're starting to run spring leagues also.
I'm totally on board with not being the one holding the ball from
Right.
our team.
Yeah, I agree. We'll keep things moving.
And if I'm not available, Mike usually is, he's our assistant concession manager, so.
All right, and
He's very
by all
familiar with
means,
the
you
building.
know, I don't know if you're gonna stick around for the whole meeting, probably not. We don't decide until the end of the meeting when our next meeting is. It could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I don't know. But you can always call the office and find out when it's scheduled for. And if you're in conversation with Chris McClure too, you can,
I have not talked to him, I've
Okay.
been going through Andrew.
Oh, all right, okay.
Or
all right,
Selectman Barber.
yeah. Well, our office will contact Chris McClure and
Okay.
put the heat on him to try to get something that we can work with.
I'm actually pretty friendly with Chris. We've talked on a number of projects
Okay.
quite a bit, so I could probably chime in with him and just see where he is in the progress of his plans on
Because
it.
we originally provided plans to Diane and Barbara, and I believe Andrew got a copy of them late, but it was an oblong type building based on our needs and requirements. And then somebody else got involved and it went to a square building that they said, oh, you get more square footage. The square footage doesn't do us any good, because what they designed, it gave us tons of open space, but no linked or wall space to hang our shelves and stack storage and have that. That's why we asked that it go back to the oblong, type building, rectangular building, versus the square building with all the fancy windows and stuff. All we need is a good square building, or not square, but oblong building, with the front entry bay windows for serving, a side one for serving, and then, naturally the 2 egress doors for fire safety and all that. And I provided Andrew a copy of those, and Diane again also. So I don't know what McClure's building looks like at this point. I haven't seen any new design plans.
So I did have the motion to table this discussion.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And this will be on the next agenda, next meeting agenda, so.
Okay.
Thank you for
Great.
showing up, gentlemen.
Thank you,
We'll
folks.
do what we
Really
can
appreciate
to
it.
try to keep the ball going, and hopefully you'll get some resolution.
This
Soon.
it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to this point now.
2017
Wow.
started.
Okay. All right, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next up is discussion on blighted properties. We have Andrew Golis and Kathleen Stanley here to provide some other information. This was previously brought up at least one meeting that I'm aware of. But anyway, Andrew or
Yeah,
Kathleen?
no, I'm
Andrew
actually gonna have to
is
pitch
out
it
of
over to
time.
Kathy, because I have to now get to.
Oh,
the
you do?
selectmen meeting,
Oh,
so-
all right.
Sorry, Andrew.
Okay,
Oh, no
so
problem, guys.
she's talking
She's gotta
for you.
pitch it, she has all the
Okay.
information,
Okay.
so, and
That's why we're like, oh,
and I'll
okay.
follow up with any
All
other
right.
stuff too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Didn't quite make it for Andrew to be able to speak, so. I do have a PowerPoint here, I think it was presented at another meeting before you as well. I do have some revised, copies that I can pass around. You might have to share it, didn't quite probably make enough, but let's pass some down that we wanted to be able to discuss.
So you might- Okay.
But, you know, the state had come in and met with us as far as working with blighted properties in the community. There was a team of us that met and went over them. It was a lot larger list, I believe, the last time that you
Oh,
looked
yes,
at it.
yeah.
But in talking with Jim and going through it with Andrew, you know, we've kind of reduced it down to ones that, you know, the state essentially comes in and, you're welcome, we can go through this. But the first thing that they do is send a notice to the property owner, just kind of letting them know. In fact, I have a sample notice in the back of this PowerPoint that you can look at, but most of the time, that letter that goes out to the homeowners clears up the problem. They never really move past that point. It's just getting that letter from the state that kind of says, hey, you know, this is what's going on. And again, I can try to read you the sample of what's there.
Sure. Can you?
Would that be best?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
I'll take this off if I can, let's see. So the Commonwealth of Mass, a notice of intent to seek appointment of a receiver. This letter concerns the condition of the residential premises located at, you know, whatever it would be. Public records indicate that you are the owner of record for this property. If this is incorrect, please notify my office immediately. In its present condition, this property is unfit for human habitation and poses a severe and continuing threat to the health and safety of trespassers, neighbors, and the public in general, in violation of the state sanitary code 105 CMR 410.750. There are several violations of the state sanitary code at this property. For instance, the property has a copious amount of garbage, debris, miscellaneous items that have accumulated, including a broken air conditioner, portable heater. Obviously, this is a particular property that they're
Right,
referencing.
yeah.
Furniture, gasoline cans, various household items in violation of 105 CMR 410.602. The accumulation of trash, clutter, and debris is blocking pathways to exits and blocking the modes of egress of the property in violation 105 CMR 410.451. Also, water service to the property was terminated in 2007, and this was a March 2023 letter, and there's no working sanitary facility to dispose of sewage in violation of 105 CMR 410 and 354. Under the state sanitary code and other applicable Massachusetts laws and codes, the Office of the Attorney General and the town, in this case it was Auburn, are permitted to petition to the appropriate court for the apportionment of receiver. Please be advised that unless you contact this office within 14 calendar days of the receipt of this letter, a petition for appointment of a receiver may be filed with the court pursuant to Mass General Law C-111 and 1271, copy enclosed, and the court's general equity jurisdiction. Although we are willing to discuss a reasonable resolution of these violations, conditions require that we commence an action in short order to protect the public's interest should you fail to or refuse to comply with your obligations under Massachusetts law as a property owner. If you wish to discuss your intention to resolve these issues and avoid further action, please contact me at the telephone number below or at the email address. So then, you know, a cooperative owner is going to call And it goes through that, you know, if they called and said, okay, what steps can I take? They can rectify the situation and move forward with it. And the majority of the cases, they get the letter, then action is remedied. And these properties, I don't know if you wanna talk about this more, are the ones that are particular on here. They're delinquent properties that haven't paid taxes in quite a number of years. None of them are habitated. They're all uninhabited properties. One of them is for sale. 3 of the 7 on here are brand new, the Geldbaum. The Geldbaum properties are, 2 of them are here on Dresser Hill. I have the property record cards, so we can discuss some more of this with receivership, or we can move into the particular properties. What are you comfortable with?
Well, okay, so we have 7 properties listed, and I believe at the last meeting, we discussed the ones at 40 and 42 Dresser Hill, and I thought that somebody had maybe not purchased them, but they were gonna be working to complete those, but that's not happening.
It's not happening, so they always say that, or they sometimes even say they're for sale, but nothing ever seems to come to finality. And in the meantime, they've never paid taxes on the properties.
Okay,
Additionally, there's another property that they own next to the 2 Colonials
yeah,
that they took a deposit of $250,000 for another lot, and that woman's been 2 years now and they haven't even started hers. So
Gee, she could take over one of the other ones that's 90% done.
it's terrible, yes,
Yeah.
because now she's being affected that, you know, she can't move forward, and they just, I'm not sure what the game is that they're playing. I don't know why they don't try. One of them is 80% done.
Yeah,
The other one's about 60% done, and then the one on Highland Road is currently for sale. It's framed. It's got the roof on it, maybe a couple of windows in.
about 250,000, it's
yeah.
on Realtor.com. I saw
Right,
it.
but
Really?
they, you know, they've had offers, but they won't sell it. But I'm sure they don't want to lose the equity that they had. I think that if they got a letter in the mail, they probably would put an appropriate price on the 3 properties and, you know, realize that it's time to sell them and
Right.
move
Yes,
on.
ma'am.
That's what I would think.
If I may, so the discussion that we're having today with this and this piece of paper is quite different than this board was presented a couple of weeks ago. This list had 22 names, 22 lists on it. A lot of the people, I know there was people living in some of the buildings on that list. They were not delinquent in taxes and all that. I was 100% against that. I don't want to say 100%. I wasn't. I was 99.9% against it.
That's
And
why I'm laughing.
And I said, I'm not saying no, but it would take a lot to persuade me because I want to hear more about the program because I just didn't think it was right whatsoever. What you're presenting to the board tonight is all of these are in tax title right now, or at least delinquent in
Yeah.
taxes.
Yeah.
To me, that's a different, totally different conversation than what we had before. And with that being said, just so the board knows, I'm listening to what we can do to help them, maybe the town. I'm listening now because
Okay.
I wasn't before, to be honest.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I've heard everything you said. I'm not saying I'm not listening to you because I am. I'm saying when I wasn't up for the program last time, and now that I understand, okay, it's a different story. These people owe the taxes on it. It's a whole different ball game to me.
Yeah, I think what was presented before was just a result of everybody meeting and saying, okay, what are the blighted properties in the community, not what we want to move forward with. And the state is saying they only want, like 3 to 7 properties that they would start with anyway. They don't want 20-something. And a lot of those either shouldn't have been on there or there's people living there. They don't really want to work with that. The state's not looking to do that either. They're mainly looking at vacant properties that can pose a threat if, teenagers, like for instance, the first one on the list is 35 North Main Street. Now that's down here, a lot of the windows are out, it's more of a concern with teenagers maybe going in there, especially when it's cold, ends up on fire, somebody gets hurt. It's more that kind of stuff that they're looking to clean up and kind of get remedied. Now some of these on the list, the fire department might potentially demo eventually. It's a process that they could go through as an option, that sometimes they do that for training.
Yes,
And
right.
I believe they did at 35 North Main Street, they did training in that one.
Yeah, the taxes on that one haven't been paid in over 3 years now, so,
So
you
what's
know.
the process, Kathleen? At what point can the town legally go in and just take title of the, whatever's there?
Tax title takes a long time, so
It
that's a long process. So we're hoping that with these properties, you know, a letter from the state might sort of speed them along in the process of either, you know,
Right.
getting a date on the calendar with the fire department or putting them for sale and selling them, or just kind of, you know, move them along in the right direction so that they're not a blighted property on the
I
community.
agree. You would think, because, I mean, house lots in general are 70, 80,000, something like that. Now, granted, some of these properties I'm aware of, and they would, you know, you bring in a bulldozer and just, it's gonna cost you money to demolish, take off, and start
Yes.
anew. But there's still, I would think, some value to it, and I gotta believe that whoever's on the receiving end of this, that I would think that if they think it's imminent that they're gonna lose whatever equity that they've got in the place, even if it's gonna just be a demo, that they would,
They might let it go to receivership for
they
that reason.
might, they might,
say,
or
okay,
they might
let
say, you know
somebody,
what, okay, all right,
like they haven't paid taxes in 3 years, they're kind of walking away anyway.
oh, yes.
So if we can get a receivership before it gets any worse, the problem with tax title is it costs the town money to acquire the property. You have to go through the court proceedings, you're paying an attorney, you're waiting a couple of years to get possession of it, and now there's a change in the laws that even if you do get it and you auction it off, you still might only be able to keep whatever it's cost you, and then you have to now return it possibly to the owner. There's been a
Oh,
ruling in a
geez.
different state that's saying
Oh,
you
wow.
can't profit from it anymore. So this is gonna save the town from having
Yeah,
to go
okay.
through all that.
All right, yes, Matt.
So my question is, what do you need from this board? How can we help or hurt, or what can we do? What do you need us for on this?
So the main issue, Kim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is I think that there's a relinquishment or somehow giving permission to the state to act as the Board of Health in this case. Is that what it, I'm not sure the exact wording.
Yep, I believe that's correct, yeah.
And so if we didn't, as a board, decide to relinquish that
Then the
control
state
to the state,
can't.
the state can't do that.
Correct.
So we don't move, okay, so then that becomes pretty clear, yes, Matt.
Okay, so in discussion, we have, and I looked, I think it was 11 North Main Street that they did the fire drills on, not 35, but my
Okay,
correction
yeah,
on
that could be, yeah.
But anyways, so I understand, right? The house is falling down, roof's falling in, the house is in shambles, right? Maybe the board can do something if we're gonna talk about this project, but 3 of these houses are brand new. So it's like, well then, how does that come, like, how do we say, well, that house is brand new, but it's a threat, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's not a threat, but they're not paying taxes on it either.
But
Right.
paying taxes doesn't really come down to our board saying, we're taking this house from you and it's going to the state, or whatever they're asking us to do.
What about trespassers that go in there and start squatting when there's no septic system and there's no water hooked up?
Right.
And try to make a house in there and live in there?
Yeah, so I get it, and I don't know what the solution is. A house that's fallen down and you get somebody in there, I mean, I'm just
What about
interested.
squatters moving into a new house though? Wouldn't that pose a danger as well if there's no septic system and there's no water? Wouldn't a case be able to be made in that regard?
I would suppose it would. You could have squatters go anywhere and do that.
Especially the one that's 80% done, I mean,
Right,
right? Go in there and
nice place.
nice place and
Right.
have a little fire in the back and, you know,
But-
try to keep warm and,
Is there something any of the landowners could do with a house falling down or a brand new house? Put up a chain link fence that was, okay, now we just kept the general public up. Not that any of us that live in town want to see that, but I'm just legally, what, I, you know, I understand.
Is there a way to mediate it?
Is there a way to mediate? Because I'm interested in the conversation. I just, as the scenarios unfold, do we go case by case basis?
well,
Do
I
we
don't
go-
think you're gonna get people not paying taxes being willing to put up a chain link fence and invest in it that way. And then, I guess if a teenager wants to get in and make house, they're gonna climb the fence and get in anyway, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you're gonna really stop trespassers
I guess
for a reason, right?
I guess from like a, right, like the Board of Health standard, looking at like health and life safety is really where I'm concerned about the focus, right? So we're concerned about people coming in and having unsafe structures and them getting hurt. That's, right, life safety number one. You're concerned from a health perspective about people coming in, you know, water and sewage issues, that being a public health issue, right? Which can happen in, I mean, if I was gonna squat somewhere, I'd wanna go to the new house, not the old house, right?
That's what I'm thinking.
But that being said, I guess my question is, have we done our due diligence as a committee, but then also as a town, to reach out to these folks and say, we're concerned about the health and life safety concerns of these before we go to the state? Is there like a stopgap? Like, have we done all of the, I guess I'm not aware, and I apologize for my ignorance, of what we've done as a town with these owners to ensure that they know that we're concerned from a safety and health perspective.
Matt?
I agree with you 100% on that, and that's why the letter that she just read to us, to me, kind of sounds like that first step in reaching out. You're not in the program. This is about to happen if you don't, and that's what that letter, to me, I was understanding it.
Yeah, and another thing that I wanna make clear is at any time in this process that the state sends out a letter, or that we feel like, you know what, we don't wanna do this anymore, we have the ability to stop it. So, you know, if they send out a letter and then it's going into receivership and somebody comes in and says, you know, I really don't wanna do this, I wanna work with the town, we call the state and say, yeah, we're done, we're gonna stop and we're gonna take over from here. So I did ask Andrew that earlier to say, you know, that was my understanding, and that is true. So this isn't like a be-all, end-all that we're turning it over to the state and we can never get it back again. You know, they're gonna send a letter, maybe that takes care of it, it addresses some of these issues, and, you know, we can take it from there.
Yeah.
If I may. So, what is your understanding of the receivership? Probably the quick answer, because I know it's probably long, but if it goes into receivership, what happens? They fix it up and then there's a bill for somebody?
I did have this experience in another community where there was a gentleman that had a lot of you know, boats, horse trailers, all kinds of things inside the property, outside the property, and you know, the community had complained quite a bit. So the state did come in, a receiver came in and sort of worked with the owner to sell the boats, sell the trailers, kind of get everything out and bring it back up to speed again. So a receivership just means that somebody comes in to say, okay, we're gonna kind of take this over and see what we can do. Do some of these houses have holes in the roofs? Are they savable? Can they bring it back to the studs and do something? I don't know, but that's the receiver's job. That's what they would determine. Is it something we can do? If it isn't, they may not get a bid on it at the state level, right? So, you know, the state sends it out and they have to wait and get somebody that accepts the bid for receivership. Some properties are obviously more attractive than others because they want to be able to come in and they may end up owning it, and then they may end up being able to sell it, and then they make a profit out of it. So that potential is there for that to happen. It may or may not get to that point. You know, in the community I was in, it didn't, but you know, it cleaned
Yes,
up the
ma'am.
property.
What our town of Charlton, is proposing, are we proposing a mandatory plan or a voluntary plan?
Right now, all we're looking at is the Board of Health willing to let the state send a letter to these 7 properties? That's all we're really looking for right now. Can we send a letter to these 7 properties? Each time we get another list, and we may never, we would come before the Board of Health and say, in these particular properties, are you willing to let the state send a letter?
And the rest of the properties that were previously on the list have either been resolved or determined that they aren't appropriate for this program, correct?
At this time, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and if we decided to move forward with them down the road, I mean, I think we need to, the community needs to get its feet wet, so to speak, to see how this process works. So this is 7 properties that we're saying, let's see how this process works. The Board of Health can continue to say, okay, we're comfortable with the way that this has moved forward, or no, we're not, we want to step back and we don't want to be a part of this program anymore. That's really, we're gonna try it and see, right? And then we'll know for the future whether we want to look at additional properties or not.
My one concern, and it may be unfounded, would be if we say, go ahead, we vote as a board and say, go ahead, let the state send the letters, and then if this falls off our radar screen, does the state just take over and just do whatever they feel appropriate?
No,
Or
I think there's constant meetings that would be probably with Jim, but I'm not 100% sure on
Okay,
that.
all right, because that would be my concern.
Mhm.
I'm all for getting some of these places, especially these ones on Main Street that are just, not only are they an eyesore, but when you got a hole through the roof, the thing is just,
Yeah.
I wouldn't step foot in there unless I had a respirator on.
Yeah, yeah, and you wouldn't want to see some teenagers go in there or get
No,
hurt or anything
no.
like that. So, I mean, I do think it is,
It's
a safety issue
and-
that
and
way.
To live next door to that and just see the place fall apart, that's another thing, not a Board of Health issue, but it's, anyway. Catherine, anything else?
No, I mean, I guess, are we looking to do it as a blanket, we're gonna do it with all 7 properties, or are we gonna talk about each one? And I'm asking,
can.
because I'm
I
not
have the
aware.
property record cards, we can go through each one if you want to, or not. It's whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, Catherine, are you talking about, like, maybe the 3 new ones, putting those a separate issue, but these other ones that are uninhabitable, holes in the roof, demo needed, whatever, vacant, nobody's there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and I appreciate what you're saying. I guess it just seems like, they all pose a life safety concern, but I guess the ones that are truly uninhabitable and potentially structurally unstable are a little bit more concerning to me than the new properties. However, like you guys had said, we're not here to determine if they haven't paid their taxes. I understand that, right? But I'm just trying to look at it from like a safety and health perspective, and I'm certainly not the most appropriate person to determine if one is more unsafe than the other. I just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence. That's all. And I think this program is probably a good first step. I just didn't know what your thoughts were on it.
Matt, anything else?
Well, I'm not willing to look at or make a decision on any of these properties today. This was a new item on the agenda today, so I'm getting my feet with it being back on the list. At a bare minimum, myself personally, if I was to say, if my vote was to send a letter to the state, I'm gonna go to these addresses and look at them with my own 2 eyes and say, yeah, this thing has fallen down, and I agree, it's a safety hazard, or not, whatever. But I'm familiar with a couple of them. I think 11
Do
I'm
you
very
want
familiar
to look at
with.
pictures at all and see which ones you are familiar with? Like 35 North Main Street, is everybody familiar with that? It's right down the street.
It was across from Terry's house.
You can,
If you have
it's
pictures,
across
yeah,
from
can I-
Terry's house. You can pass it around and see if it jogs your memory. So where you're splitting, if you're driving up when you split to head up to St. Joseph's.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
it's
I know
kind of-
exactly where you're
This has
speaking
got
of.
the big RV out front
Big
that's
RV,
Yeah,
got
big RV, the
Yeah.
windows
trees
are kind
growing
of out.
through it
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
Yeah.
So, like, if we can, John, that property, right? It went up for auction, something happened, the guy that bid on it got bum deal by the auctioneer. I heard the whole story from the guy that tried to buy it, and whatever. Now it is where it is. I know there's wetlands in the back. I think it's a tough piece to do anything with. But recently, and I don't know what that answer is, a year ago or so, yeah, there was action in there. Somebody was in there. Looks
I
like they
know.
were starting to fix things up.
I know, but they haven't paid taxes in 3 years on it.
So, if the issue is they haven't paid taxes, I don't think this board has anything. It's not out of
No,
time.
that's not. It has to go to tax title, but I mean, I don't know that they're gonna, that was a year ago.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're,
Come and go.
and if they are, that's great, because we send the letter and they're gonna say, hey, wait, got this in process, and they would call and say, I've got a process in place. It's not like we're taking the properties away from them.
Right.
All we're gonna do is send a letter.
And I can
I
just
thought
attest
Jim
to.
sent a letter to these.
I don't think a letter's been sent, but I
Okay.
was just going to say, like, when we come across, if we get a complaint about a house, and the first step is for us to send out a notice of inspection. A lot of times, it doesn't even reach the point where we can actually inspect. They correct the issue before we go and write them up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it will be a similar case for some of these houses, that the letter would be enough of a push for them to rectify the situation before we take further action.
I agree with the only hiccup in that is, yeah, but they haven't paid the taxes on them. So are they
We'll
giving
take
up on
that
the
out of the equation, because as you said, that really isn't your concern.
No, I
So-
understand it's not our concern, but I don't know a letter saying this is gonna do any different, because to me, losing the property to taxes would be worse than the Board of Health telling you to clean it up.
Well, I think that for a lot of these people, when they're not paying the taxes, they kind of already walked away anyway. So they might just be like, yeah, I kind of wanted the town to take it. That's why I stopped paying the taxes on it, right? I mean, for some of them, that might be not the new ones, but for some of the other ones, I think 11 North Main Street, this is the one next to CVS.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with that picture.
Yeah, that's-
Kurt mentioned that there
Could I take
might
a
be
peek at it?
some kind of contamination.
Thank you very much.
Or something in the back. So it could be that they feel like they've already taken it as far as they can, and they're saying, okay, there's not really anything else I can do. Maybe receivership would be a welcome thing for them, because they don't really know what to do other than walk away.
Yes, Matt.
So with that being said, that comes right back to my question, is this a mandatory or a voluntary program? And the two that we just talked about, if the homeowner was on board with it, I'm on board with it. To me, it seems like we need to communicate with these homeowners one way or the other. And if the town has gone as far as we can go and they're not doing anything with the town, then the state letter is the next step, I would assume. But like John says, so we give permission for the state letter, then what? You know what I mean? We find out down the road the state's taking over the house and they're being built and the homeowners are coming to our office because
No,
we,
they're in constant
you know,
communication, though. They're not,
Yeah.
and you can stop it at any time.
who can stop it?
You guys can, as the Board of Health. You can say, okay, you know, you're gonna be working with Andrew to say, okay, what steps are we in? They're not gonna just take these properties. It's not like we're giving, the state they don't have possession as a result of them sending a letter. So they still have to be in communication to say, okay, where are we going with this? And we could perhaps confirm with them that, you know, what is the process as far as meeting weekly, monthly, you know, is there a certain stage that the town can't say, I want to stop this process, we don't want to take it any further? From what I understood, at any time, the town could say, we want to stop the process.
Yes, ma'am.
I would think that once the receivership began and there was
Well,
a contractor in
The receivership
there,
is another story, yes.
it's
once-
over.
Yes, but that initial process, those few weeks, I would think that you're gonna have constant communication.
So,
Because once the receivership, then yes, that's different.
so you're asking this board to agree to send a letter basically threatening about, or I don't wanna say threatening, cause that's probably strong, but,
Encouraging.
advising or
Advising,
letting the landowner know what the next step could be as far as state coming in,
Well,
basically.
and what their violations are. You know, I mean, I think when I read that letter to you, right, it had constant quoting of what code was in
Violations,
violation.
Yeah.
So I think that gives the town some teeth, because the state's doing that and saying, okay, it's in violation of this code, it's in violation of this code, it's violation of this code. So that things are, the homeowner is made aware of the legality of what the issue really is, right? And the state might look at these and say, you know what, we're not comfortable with doing it. They might say, you know, I'm not gonna take the new houses, we don't feel comfortable because of one reason or another. I don't know what the state's gonna say. They've just reached back out to us and said, do you have 3 to 7 properties that we could begin to look at?
Right.
They might look at them, they're gonna go look at them, it's not like they're gonna just send a letter, they're gonna have to go determine what the violations are. So they're
Right.
gonna have to go visit the properties as well to figure out how to write a letter saying what violations are in order, right? So there's a whole bunch of steps that have to be taken before the letter probably would even go out.
Yes.
So, with that being said, why is the state asking us for properties? If it's a problem with the town of Charlton, and
No,
we're
we
trying to
reached
clean
out.
it up. Oh, we reached out to them first.
Yeah, I think it's, is it Dennis at the fire station?
Yeah, Dennis Carlson.
Yes.
Yep.
So he kind of made that whole initial list when he was driving around as part of his job to say, you know, what are the problem properties? Okay? And then I think that, you know, Kurt maybe chimed in with some, I chimed in with some, we kind of went together and asked the state, can you come and explain what this is all about and what can be done for the community? So then they came in and they made their presentation. That's what we did in the other community as well. We asked the state, okay, is there something you can do to help us bring things up? Because things are out of control for some of these.
I've got a feeling that some of these properties, not all of them, but some of them, the owner's gonna say, oh, thank God, somebody's gonna take this albatross
Right.
off my hands, because I don't wanna pay the cost to demo it, and I can't put in a new septic system that'll, the lot's, non-compliant for this, that, and
Right.
the other reason, and,
Yeah.
here, take it, go ahead, no charge, what do I have to sign?
This is right here, answer some of your questions. It says pre-receivership agreement. This is part of the PowerPoint that the state presented to us. So the pre-receivership, they work with the owner to get compliance prior to filing an action if the owner is cooperative. Can be written or oral. Timeframes are established to complete work to remedy the code violations. So that is all done pre-receivership. So the letter's gonna go out, and then they're gonna work with the owner to see if they can get compliance. So there's some steps in here before it would get, so there's the demand letter. I mean, we can go through this whole thing. We can ask them to come back in and present to the whole Board of Health if you'd like.
I would like that.
I mean, I
Because-
don't know. They presented, Jim was there obviously at the first one, and that was back in September. And it's called the Neighborhood Renewal Division at the state. What their mission is, this is the whole state, and we probably all know about it when you see that much of it in purple, that they've worked with other communities, right?
And the state.
We'd probably all know about it if there was some big, bad, terrible thing that's happening as a result of this.
Well, the state is also looking for more affordable housing and increasing just housing units in general for the public. But obviously, this is one way that they can get in there and get their feet wet and rehab some properties.
Yep. So this goes through the statutory and legal authority, the Mass General Law about the receivership. So that slide talks about that, when to use receivership, vacant, partially vacant residential property in conditions that violate the state sanitary code, and repairs ensure compliance will not exceed the market value of the property. When there's a willing receiver who has funding, is bonded and insured, and has been vetted by the court. Property with a suitable amount of unpaid or outstanding tax bills or liens. So that's why I say the second one here, the state may determine, these properties are beyond repair and that a receiver is not going to be able to get any market value in order to continue. That might be what happens. The 3 brand new ones might actually be the ones that work for that one. But again, we don't know until we give some to the state to see what do they have to say about it. So the first step is a violation of order letters. Municipal letters come in all different forms but must cite to violations of the sanitary code. Common examples of violations are overgrowth, rubbish, garbage, structural damage, which in our case a lot of it is structural damage. And then it just goes through the sanitary code, which you probably are all well aware of. The demand letter is then the next step, once they've made those other determinations. The pre-receivership agreement, working with the owner.
What's the demand letter like?
That's what I read.
Okay,
That's the demand letter.
that's the letter, I
Yeah,
understand.
and then they'd either have a cooperative or a non-cooperative owner, the receivership agreement, and then the petition for receivership. The court may allow a petition when the failure to repair the property poses danger. Pleadings include petition, memorandum, so that's when it actually goes to petition, and then post-filing settlement agreement. So again, I don't think we're gonna get to any of these places. Then there's the receiver appointed, hearing on the petition. I don't know if that helps at all. How does the receiver get paid? I'm happy to go through this. I mean, this is the presentation they gave to us, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Kim, you mentioned that when there's a complaint, you go out and you write a letter, and a lot of time, or you communicate with the
Right, yeah, either a
landowner,
letter or it's a call if it's something like trash.
and many times it's resolved.
Right. Yep.
Has our office reached out to any of these?
So for these ones, the Main Street ones, North Main Street, at least not since I've been here, so nothing recently. Stafford Street. I think the only ones that we recently have reached out to are the Dresser Hill ones, the two houses, just because we were in the process of, I think we even got plans for septic, and they just never followed through. So I believe we had reached out to the owners at that time, and it just never heard back. The rest of them, I do not believe anything recently has been sent out to them from our office.
So, in the big picture, as the town, what do we
You're
want?
fine.
We want these properties cleaned up? Because if that's the case, before we jump right into the state, maybe our board tries to communicate with these people, first shot at it, and say, listen, you know, to me, if their name is on this list, I think we could justify saying there's been a complaint. You said it was the fire chief himself or whoever it was,
Yeah,
the deputy fire?
we send out, notices even when it's just, something Jim or I, if we're driving by and noticed from the road, it's not uncommon for that. So, I mean, it could be, if you want to take the first step, something could be sent from the board. And then, I don't know how much time you want it to give it. If there's no response or no action done, then maybe
Then that's a
going
different
the
story.
state,
Mhm.
yeah.
30 days.
To speak to your point, I think that's what I agree with what you're saying 100%, is that's what I was trying to articulate, which I could not do apparently, is that I would feel a little bit better about giving these properties over to the state if we as a board had communicated with them and there was a failure of response or a failure of communication, because I would make me feel like at least we tried, they did not communicate with us, so we went forward with it. If we were in constant communication with all of these property owners and we had been working with them, just to send their name to the state, I don't think is a good show of faith. But secondarily, like, if we haven't talked to any of these property owners, all of a sudden to come in with the state seems like a pretty
Heavy-handed.
strong, yeah. I appreciate, I think the state probably has so
Leave
much
it open.
teeth, right? Like, and I think it's probably way more valuable and appropriate, but when it's appropriately used, I don't know. That's just kind of.
Yeah.
I agree, and John, like, if we have that and this person comes and says, I don't have the money, what can I do?
Right.
Now, hey, listen, this
Here's
is a
a
program
program.
from the
Yeah.
state.
Yeah.
Right.
This may be something you worth doing. Now, the state, if they're trying to get some whatever out of it, okay, we can give one, but it's more of a voluntary program. And that's kind of the role I want to start with is, give these people the chance to speak their piece on it and say, this is what's going on.
And then they know it's coming.
Then they know what's
Right.
coming.
Yep.
So I don't know how we'd word a letter to these 7 properties. I would send it out to all 7, that's my feeling, and just state kind of what you have here under notes and issues. And
Did-
especially for the new houses
Or you
where,
can look at the
we-
sample letter
Yeah,
that they have
yeah.
and see if there's some of those codes that you can,
yeah,
you know.
it doesn't have to be really
It
threatening or
probably
anything, just say,
similar-
we're concerned that you've got a
Right.
house that
Do you have the
has
card for that?
been in construction for 2 or
Right.
3
It
years, there's
probably
been
would
no
be similar
progress.
to when we, do receive a complaint or something else that we notice, and we
Right.
send out a
Yeah.
notice.
Yeah,
Some sort of
we-
hybrid.
We have septic
Right,
plans,
right.
but we do not have we
Which
don't
one is
know
this
what you're
one?
doing with
Right.
the property.
I think looking at that and then looking at the letter that they provided, we could come up with something and put
Where's this
together a
at?
draft
Oh, that's Russell's old
to
house.
have you guys
Across from
review.
Vito's.
The
Yeah.
only other
Yeah.
question I
That's
have is in
Tamara Russell's
regards
old
to
house.
these
Is
new
it?
properties.
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Is
you can
there
see the
a,
sheetrock
this is
when
not
you
the
drive
right
by.
term, so
Yeah,
I
it's bad.
apologize,
That
but
was
is there a
bad.
statute of limitations?
Cute little
Like,
old house,
so
though,
for
too bad.
example, there was
Mm.
recently
it's
a
so pretty.
property
Yeah.
that was
And then
purchased
you
and
ask for
built
98.
directly across from
98,
my
yeah.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the construction took a
I'd like to
very
know
long
what's
time.
going on
And now the
there.
home is
Yeah.
purchased and inhabited and all of those things. I guess
know who
I just
Uncle
don't have
Lawrence
enough information
is,
about
you know,
these
Natasha
3
and Darlene
new build
and Uncle
properties to
Lawrence, but
understand
I was
exactly
there
how long
and
have
we
they
were living in
been
it back in
abandoned,
2016.
and is there a
And then in the
reasonable
last
time frame
2
that's
or
already
3
been
years,
preset either by the
they just
town or
left the
other
house. It's
boards
open
to
the
say,
weather
okay,
and
it's
there's
been this long, now we need to take
animals
action.
It would be
going
a
on.
building
It's just-
permit,
Yeah.
building
Why?
inspector.
Hmm.
I
It's
do
a
that's-
very
know the
livable
newer
house.
ones have been
Yeah.
several
Like
years.
Years,
but I
okay.
don't know
really
if
see
there's
see
any
it
kind of
very
set
well in that picture. I drove out
terrain.
there
Like, is it a
today.
slow build, right? Like,
I'm
I
not
think
sure
about,
why they walked
you know,
away.
there are people
But that
that
one
build their own
probably is
homes
savable.
and it takes them
Okay.
10 years to
Probably
build it,
something
right?
that
Like, I wouldn't
either-
wanna,
you know, a
But if it's somebody that's
receiver or the
very
homeowner,
clearly
I
an
just-
abandoned
I don't
property
know
and
why
nothing's
they
being
walked
done, it's
away.
different.
They haven't paid the taxes in a couple
What
of
should,
years,
seems
and
like
they
this
just
is, I
seem to
just,
have walked
again, wanna
away.
make
But
sure
it wasn't that long ago.
we're doing due
that
diligence.
somebody
Right.
was living in it.
Yeah,
So I, doesn't make any sense to me why.
yeah, who
So-
knows?
So I guess the proposal is to start, in between Kim and Jim, we could get a letter, draft letters formulated, composed for these 7 properties. And the board can review that and then we can send that out. And then from there, depending on the response, give them 30, I would suggest 30 days. I mean, 30 days is plenty. I don't know whether it would have to be certified. It's only 7 properties. What is it, $10 for certified?
Send it out certified so you know that they've received
Yeah.
it, and then
Yep.
give them 30 days, and then you can vote again to move forward if, you know,
Right.
depending on what happens as a
Yeah.
result.
Yeah, I think if we put them on notice, especially from this board, I like your idea, Catherine, where it's like, you know, we'll give them the chance at this level, our local level, before it gets turned over to the state.
Seems fair.
Yeah,
Just a quick story, I know it's all time sensitive, 35 Main Street.
yeah.
So it was Terry's house across the street there. So my good friend's grandparents grew up in that house and all of that. So I'm very familiar with that property. And one day the truck got stolen. So they called the police and said, hey, someone just stole the truck and this and that. And the cops come and they're trying to figure it out. And they go, it's not that one over there in the bushes. It rolled across Main Street
No.
up to that property right there. It was sitting right there. So they found the vehicle.
Wow.
Easiest investigation
Yeah,
ever
right.
done.
That one worked out.
Yeah,
It
right.
didn't take too long.
Arrived on the scene at 7:07,
Right.
7:08, we found the
We found
Vehicle
the,
recovered.
yeah,
Yeah.
vehicle recovered.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
that's funny.
Star.
so I'm on board, John. Do we have to make a motion on that, or is it just
Yeah.
business as usual where they send a letter?
I don't know. We can do either, but I think that we're pretty much in agreement.
Agreed.
Just to send a letter, or at least formulate a letter, and then we can
Approve it.
Yeah,
discuss it.
so if you make, can you make a motion to send a letter and take this up again at a future meeting?
Yeah, I'll do that. Does somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
What Kathleen said. You're the honorary member for tonight.
To send a letter with 30 days' notice and that the board will take it up at a future meeting.
Right.
I'm
there
good
you
with
go.
that.
I'm good
Yep.
with that.
Yep, after we approve the letter, or it's reviewed, or however.
Right.
As,
it
as
goes
far as the letter goes, John, if you want to look at it,
Yeah.
whatever you think is good, I don't need to see it. So
Agreed.
that's up to you.
All
Yep.
right. Okay. And we have your email addresses too. We can,
And you want it sent certified?
I would say certified,
Okay.
yeah, otherwise,
Yeah,
they'll
right.
say,
then-
oh, I haven't been to that post office
Yeah.
box in
Received it, yeah.
years.
Yeah.
you know.
We probably want to be thinking about what happens when we get the cards back unsigned, though.
Yeah, well,
That
then
is gonna
we'll
be-
discuss.
yeah.
We'll
That's gonna
discuss.
happen.
Then-
It is,
Then
especially
it's
in
off to
Cranberry
the
Meadow.
state, I guess, you
Yeah.
know?
Right, because they've walked away. I mean, there's no way to
Yeah.
reach them, and
Yeah, some people
Yeah,
are
that's
just
too bad,
totally
yeah.
gone, maybe no longer living or out of the state, and they just said, I don't want that.
yeah,
That was way too much money to fix.
yeah. Do you know Natasha or Darlene on Cranberry Meadow? and
No,
that there
it was
might
a
be different
different-
address.
It was a property down there that I thought Jim told me who the owner was of that property. And that's who I mentioned to you, but it's not the 2 names that you just gave me.
Yeah. Some of these, would come back, but some others would not because they go into like Joe Jenny Road in Oxford is Gelbaum. But there's 2 of them, but we might try to see if we can find some better addresses before you even send it registered.
I think it'll be really good that I think maybe not with the new builds, but with some of the older properties, just due to financial restrictions, like if they want to participate in the state program, giving them that option might be a positive for them
Yeah.
and for our partnership with the state. So I think that's a good plan.
I agree.
If I had been given a property and I couldn't afford it, like that stinks, right? So what do we do with the best of a bad situation?
Right.
So I would suggest then that we take the blighted properties and move it from new business to old business for the next meeting, which may be less than 30 days, but I don't want to lose sight of that.
Mhm.
And then we're wondering 3 and 4 months later, and Kathleen is also wondering the same thing, like, I wonder what happened with that. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I'm sure that by your next meeting, the letters will be in the mail and you may have already gotten some responses.
Maybe,
So I imagine
yeah.
you'll be talking about it at the next meeting and then
Yeah.
either be ready to vote or at the meeting after that, be ready to vote, so.
Do we just send a letter, or do we send a letter and leave a notice on the dwelling?
Could do both, I guess.
It's not a bad idea.
Because, yeah, especially if they're not, if the address is kind of bogus, so to speak. I mean, if they had the property for 20-plus years and maybe the address that they gave, they've since moved or,
So I know in different scenarios, like especially when I've been dealing with municipalities or homeowners, I would send the certified mail, but I also send it snail mail. For whatever reason, there is a requirement to send it both ways.
okay.
But if we hand deliver is, I think, equivalent to snail mail. So if we have the certified mail and they come back bogus, and the guy says, or the woman says, I never got the mail, at least our town can say, we also physically posted it on your dwelling on this day,
Yeah,
to just give us a little more
Not bad.
strength.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I easily drove to all 6 of them in an hour, or 7 of them in an hour today, like it
Yeah.
doesn't take a lot of time.
Yeah.
and you're not ready to put in an offer on any of them,
No.
any of the old ones? Fix the
No.
roof, put a tarp over it,
Yeah.
move right in.
Right? Maybe the new one. I have a lot of people that call about 40 and 42 Dresser Hill.
Yeah.
you know.
Really?
I don't
We
understand.
get calls all the time, they just wanna buy them and, we try to give them some numbers to call and nothing seems to ever happen.
That
So,
was-
I don't
that
know
was
what
wild.
that's about,
Even when they were building it, they started off on the wrong foot up there.
yeah.
And I don't think it ever got any better for them.
No,
It's
I
too
don't
bad.
think so, yeah, and it used to be carrot cake, now it's Gellbaum.
So we have action on that. There's no more discussion. We're good?
No more discussion as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Thank you
You done
for
with
your
me?
help,
Okay.
Thank you
Kathleen,
very
and
much.
we'll be in
Thank
touch.
All right, have a good night.
Thank you.
Next up, review and approval of Charlton Hauler regulations. And this has not come, I've been on the board almost 8 years now. And I think we've reviewed this once, maybe, Matt?
Yeah.
I'm not too familiar to see what's changed in here. I suspect there are some things that are new. Kim, you probably know better than me.
No, I think what's going on, and Kim,
Yeah.
correct me,
You
but it's just the end of the year, John. So our haulers get an annual permit every year.
Right, yeah.
So I think we just have to look at the list, and if anybody's been naughty and we have a reason not to, give it
Okay.
back. But besides that, I think it's just.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
think there's
sorry.
really anything new, but we have had some slackers, as we usually do,
Slackers.
but.
Well,
there's
all
been
right, so
some
there's
slow-
what, 8 haulers or 9 haulers maybe in
Yeah,
town now?
about that, yeah.
Yeah.
So is it something that you guys want to tell us about that we're having issues with?
So, I mean, every year, Andrea did the brunt of it this year. We send out letters early November. Your permit is expiring. We basically handhold them. This is what you have to do. And we still, it's January, what is it now, 23rd. There's still some people we haven't received either payment from, or last week, Andrew's chasing people for applications. Some of the trash haulers, septic haulers. It's an ongoing thing that we go through every year, from food to the mobile home. It's just we're chasing people constantly. I know trash haulers was one that there's some companies that don't seem to know even what trucks they have in town, and it's like pulling teeth to get through to somebody. So I think it's just more the board reapproving these
Okay.
regulations, and then just because we do send them out, it's just making sure that everyone's on the same page going forward.
So, do you need us to, send a letter to some of these company owners?
So at this point, we've mostly got it all taken care of between calls. Between all 3 of us have been calling or trying to get a hold of somebody. I think now we're just waiting on one check that may have gotten lost in the mail. But we're fine other than that. Finally,
Good.
weeks into the new year.
So we have to vote that this is
Yes,
good for
to
2024. That's
review
why
and
I saw
approve.
draft and I said, oh, this must be some new changes in here. But if it's basically the same, and there's really no issues, then
Were there any amendments to this?
I don't know if there was really anything specific on this. I'm not exactly sure.
I mean, if we haven't
Okay.
changed anything, and technically it should have went through the board if we did, so if we didn't change
Yeah.
anything, I'm good with keeping it the same.
yeah, I am too. Do we need to vote on that? Or no?
It's an agenda item, I guess it's not gonna hurt if we vote
All
on
right.
it. So I'll make
I
a
don't know if you've
motion.
had a chance, but
Yeah,
to
we
be
can
honest, I
table
have
it.
not, I don't think we have to. Between Jim and Kim and Andrea, I'm sure that everything's in order.
I would like to be able to help our office though with the, the hesitation on the company side of things.
Yeah.
Like I'll give you an example. Similar town, I'll say it, Sturbridge. They have a lot of land in chapter land, 61 land,
Yep.
right? And it's a process. You have to give your paperwork on a certain day, and if not, it's a massive tax consequence if you don't have it on time. So their assessors would like, hey, by the way, get your stuff submitted, and then as the time would tick, they didn't get it submitted. Hey, you have it like a week before, your deadline is here, you have to do it. And then finally, the day of or the day before, they'd start calling and say, this is due tomorrow, and if it's not in, you're going to lose it. And they still had, like 10 or 25% of the people still dropped the ball on that. But they basically handheld, like our office is doing on all these permit issues. And this year, I have chapter land, and I was one of the ones, they weren't speaking to me because I was on it, I was doing my part, but I'm just saying, they basically said, we're not doing this for you anymore.
Right.
You either get it in on time,
Yep.
or you're gonna pay full taxes. That's a big deal over there.
And it's not just, does it go back 3 years, or is that only when you take it out of chapter 61?
I think I don't know, I've never had to go backwards on it, but I don't think it's good. It's gonna go back. It's
okay.
definitely gonna go back.
So then they'd have to renew the process to put it back through to chapter 61, like they were just
Like a new applicant.
walking into the office for the first time and saying, hey,
Yeah.
I've got some property I want to put in.
And I think that the consequences of losing it does go backwards. I
Yeah.
don't know how much, but
It's 3 years, I think, when you take it out of conservation, 61 or 61A, whatever it is. I think what they do is they say, you're gonna pay, that's fine, you can do that and turn it into subdivision or business or whatever, but you're gonna, for the prior 3 years, you're gonna pay increased amount, full tax, whatever, yeah, so.
So, with us, we don't have that bite, right? Because we can't go back and say, well, you can't haul trash last year. That's already happened, right?
Right.
No, but you can say,
This, if I may,
Yes.
this is something we did, Andrea and I, and mentioned it to Jim just because it was really time consuming this year in particular, chasing people down, and it's like you do the same thing every year. Like, why we give you 2 months in advance of notice? Why is it still so difficult? So I don't know if this is something that we could talk about at a later meeting, but if there's we moved to online permitting too for a lot of the permits, so it's really very simple for them to be doing this. One of the benefits for going online was that the company had put together kind of the renewal letter and several other letters that we kind of tweaked to send out. One of the letters, which we don't use, but other towns do, other areas around here, that if it's not in by 1/1 or the following week, that kind of a demand letter is sent, and that an extra fine or a payment, something to hold them accountable, could be, I don't want to say threatened, but could be sent out that, hey, if we don't receive this by this day, you're going to pay, I know some people do double permit fees, that seems a little intense, but something to let them know you can't keep doing this year after year.
right,
I feel
yeah.
like I'm not saying we should do this by any means, but like an astronomical fee is more intimidating than
Yeah.
something else too.
Just because they're not getting it, and it's like, I've been here over 6 years, and it's the same thing. You're seeing the same thing every year.
So, John, if I may.
Yeah,
So, let's just say we have trash hauler A,
Yeah,
okay? And they don't get the permit,
yeah,
but they continue to haul trash. They have
Yeah.
their customers.
still
What
making
can we
money.
do?
right.
We get
So,
the cops on them? Or?
The police can technically pull them over if they don't have their decal from us, and can pull them over. But has it ever happened? No. But I mean, it is something that there was, let's say call it Trash Company A, that we did say, hey, you're operating without a permit, you have this many trucks going up and down through Charlton, you're not permitted, the police could pull you over. They don't, unfortunately, they don't take it seriously.
Is there a fine associated with getting pulled over and cited for it?
Well, I think our office could give the fine at that point.
Right, and I think that was something that we were, not that we want to, like, we don't want to have to charge, we don't want to be doing this, but
Right.
there has to be something for them to realize you need to get this done by January 1st.
I almost feel like an upfront fee, though, of saying
Yeah.
if you don't have it in on time
It's
is
just
more
like the-
formidable than you might get.
Yeah, it's same thing.
Cited.
I get my mortgage bill
Yeah.
every month, and it says, if you pay after the 16th of the month, you're gonna pay it. It's not much. It's like $21.39 more.
Yeah.
And, but obviously this should be more. What is the cost for the fee?
So for Hollard is
175 or something?
100 per truck.
100 per
Yeah.
truck.
Yep.
And what, some of these larger companies like,
They could have
Casella.
7, 8, 9, 10 trucks. Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So, the thing with us is we don't have luckily, we don't have the tipping facility in our yard, right? We don't have the gatehouse where they're coming to us.
Oh,
to
right,
dump.
and say, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, you don't have a permit.
You don't have
turn
a permit,
around,
turn
go.
around.
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury on this
No.
side of things. All we can do is say you're not allowed. It probably would end up in a court battle, to be honest with you, because we couldn't. I don't even know what the PD could do pulling a truck over. Everybody has the right to be in every town.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't. Why can't this truck be on this road? Tell me, what's the law? Are you operating in this town? I mean, it becomes a nightmare. You know, so I think the best alternative, a solution for this, is to work with these people, but maybe get give them a letter that they go, oh, we don't want that to happen. You know,
Right.
and the pocketbook's the one that hurts them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just what we were thinking because we've never done that before. Nothing formally has ever been sent out. It's just us nagging them. Like, we
Right.
still need this, still need this. But we were thinking maybe that letter wouldn't be, a bad idea. Maybe it would give them the extra kick they need to actually
Right.
submit it.
Yeah, and I'd
We
do
have a
that
late-
with the first one.
Right,
If you're giving,
yeah.
send it out November 1st and say it's due January 1st. And if you're late, it's gonna be $50 per
Yeah.
permit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we don't have it by the week after January 1st. So it has to be postmarked by January 1st and we have to receive it. Otherwise, it's gonna be a $50 fine per truck for your,
And we could even tweak the language, threaten suspension of
Yeah,
working in town.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That
and-
the letter that the online company kind of had for a draft. It was very kind of threatening, but it was like revoking a permit could be
Yeah.
a possibility. It was,
Right.
it was pretty intense. So I don't know how far we want to go, but I think something like that would get their attention.
Right, no, I agree. Because otherwise they'll just say, well, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
wait till I get my tax money back in April,
and if we did that, we sent the letter and all that, and they continue to operate, and the PD can only do so much, or they don't, or whatever. If it ended up in court, at least, again, we're stronger, saying, no, we sent you a letter. This is what's going on. This is ridiculous, and we're not going to tolerate it. With the Board of Health, you're not going to haul trash in our town without permission. Period. That's the law.
Right.
And at that point, maybe the court system might be able to strengthen. Not that we ever want to go there, but
Right.
just thinking out where we're talking on this. So
Think about how many permits have late fees. Like it seems like it makes perfect
Yeah.
sense, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the rest of the town does it. I mean, if you're late, whatever, whether it's probably a dog license
Yep.
or anything else.
There's a late fee for the
It's
dog
a late
license.
fee for,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So did we help you with that?
yeah. So
Okay.
go ahead, feel free to
Yeah.
put some bite behind that.
Yeah, I think we're good for 2024, but I know it's just
Yeah, for
inevitable.
something
We're going to
for-
run into it again
Yeah,
next
for
year.
2025, you could redo the letter and put something in there.
I had one. You would have been proud of me, Kim, or not. I was coming out of Sturbridge. It was a trash hauler. Load was covered,
Yep.
but not adequate. Why even cover the
Flying
load?
all over, yeah.
Trash was coming out, it's blowing out. I know the hauler. And I'm behind them and I'm like, are you kidding me? So these tarps that go over, they actually raise and lower at the cab. So if you have a shorter dumpster, you bring it down, a taller dumpster. So he's got it all the way up and then it's all there. And everything, it's all plastic. It was building debris coming out. It was littering Sturbridge, not Charlton.
Yeah.
Not my problem, but chunks, big stuff was falling off. Like balls of insulation was coming off, all through Cracker Barrel and all that.
Yep.
But he sent it to us Charlton.
Yep.
I call corporate. Hey, listen, you got truck coming out of Sturbridge. It's this truck. Kid's driving like an idiot. Have him look because he's blowing stuff out. Keeps going because I tried to stop him before he got in the Charlton. Just keeps going, keeps going. So we get up to, it was before Amazon, Sturbridge Way. I call corporate office again. I'm like, dude, have your truck pull over. He is littering this town. This is completely unacceptable.
Yep.
And I says, listen, I'm on the Board of Health. I'm watching you litter all over town. I see it with my own 2 eyes. You got to address it right now. And the guy, he's not answering his phone. He's not answering his phone. And off the truck went and continued to go wherever, to Oxford transfer, I'm sure, Auburn or wherever it was. I was so aggravated. The amount of trash that this truck blew out of there, it was completely unacceptable. Every now and then somebody throws a coffee cup in the back of somebody's truck and they don't see it and it blows out. That's not what this is.
Right.
This was just obnoxious. I was so aggravated. I know who the hauler is, and if I ever see that permit in here, I still will bring it up with this board and say, hey, listen, yeah, I'm all for giving them a permit, but they need to understand that they have a problem. They have to have better communication with
Right.
their drivers because
Right.
that was completely unacceptable.
Right.
You know, so
Wow.
I did my part as basically a concerned citizen.
I
but-
thought you were gonna say they were heading to Charlton, and I called the police in Charlton and had them pull over with blue lights, and
I wanted to, John.
yeah, I would have.
I do that on drunk drivers, but I don't.
Yeah.
But it was completely unacceptable.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Just big and then I was actually hauling myself up in that, so I kept going back. I'm like, there's plastic from the sink, and then coming back, you know. And every time I saw it, I was getting more and more aggravated, and it was like, you know, I don't know if he made it the whole way or whatever, but.
Hopefully somebody pulled him over.
And it wasn't like the one thing came out and that's it, it's over.
Yeah, it was just, it kept.
After one came out, then you see the next
Oh,
one
yeah.
start to float up, and then that would blow out, then
I
you'd see
think
the
at
next.
that point he would have noticed. Oh,
That's what I'm saying, it was
Like,
the driver
what
was
are
a
you
complete
doing?
idiot. Look in your mirror.
yeah, right.
And it was
crazy.
operator error. Had they just put the canvas down a
Yeah.
little bit, I think it would have been much better.
Okay. So are we good? We're gonna reuse the draft January 2024 rules and regs for removal, transport, and disposal of solid waste or recycles in the town of Charlton.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Good to go. Thank you. Old business. Flint Road landfill. We got a letter. Other board members, you were copied if you haven't seen your.
saw it.
Yep.
Okay. I just want, I'm not gonna speak for Gary, because Gary's talking about gas points that were installed for the landfill gas monitoring. And I'm not gonna talk about that because I think we need him here, or at the very least Jim, who's in pretty close contact with Gary. However, I do wanna bring this up. Regarding the drinking water sampling, and I'm going to just read what Gary put in here. Sampling is progressing, results are consistent, no surprises, updated data table attached. And I just saw this just before the meeting. I just barely had enough time to print this out, so I did not look at the data. Landfill groundwater and surface water monitoring, both landfills sampled in December. CMG has the data in hand, and we are working on the quarterly reports. Again, data is consistent, no surprises. So that's the good news. I did want to make that part of the record. And we'll have Gary here at the next meeting, I think. So it's always good that we don't have anything huge happening. Yes.
Did you see that exceedance that we did have though?
Yes, I did. I think it was before,
It was,
it was in here too.
no, I think it was before this one, but.
Before, yeah,
Yeah.
because I did see that, and it was yellow highlighted our exceedances, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty far up there.
Which concerned me a little bit because it said notification the DEP required.
Yep.
Yes.
That's when it's like starts to get serious. But
Yeah.
then Gary minimized it and say, you know, not really anything concerning. So it's like, okay, so we have something, but it's not big, but there's
Yeah.
something, you know. So, but yeah.
Kim, do you have anything else on Flint Road landfill?
No, I was just gonna mention, like Matt just said, there was that one well came back high, but Gary kind of made it seem less, I guess, scary. And that there was a well too right across from it, more on the residential side, and that had no exceedances. So
Good.
that was it.
So along the same lines, PFAS, I'm assuming there's nothing new on that. I haven't, nothing from Jim or whatever.
I was actually trying to be a scientist, and I was reading the charts and looking at it a little bit, and the ones that exceeded were like outlined in red, and they were going up a little bit, and I'm like, well, it's not a lot, but it's kind of being. But then I remind myself it's parts per trillion.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, they're all J hits and it's parts per trillion. So like Gary says, yeah, but that's not a lot in the scheme of things. But it is. They weren't going down. The ones I saw looked like they were increasing. And I was like, yeah. So yeah, our eyes on it. We know about it. But
All right. Nothing else on PFAS. We'll turn it on to department head reports. Kim, you're speaking for Jim tonight. Go ahead.
I don't have any report. The only thing I was going to mention was the post road vet, which I think we could
Oh,
put under
yes.
the other business unknown if you want.
Yeah. So why don't we go right into that? Other board members, I don't know if you're aware of this. We
I don't
had
believe so.
no. This was there's the email from Post Road Vet Hospital on Route 20. So up on Route 20, not far from CVS, next door to McClure Engineering, there's a new building going up. I travel that way quite a bit, and if you've seen the new building, it's a beautiful gray building. They've been working on it for months and months, and evidently the project is behind by several months. Post Road Vet Hospital was leasing their building or part of the building further out on Route 20 towards Sturbridge, and he gave it some buffer, I guess, and he's due to be out of there, the building, January 31st. So he's got, and he fully expected this other building to be all set to go. It is not gonna be ready to go, according to Kurt Meskis, until March 1st. So he's gonna be out in the cold, basically, for a month, and he's got appointments for cats and dogs and whatever else he's checking on. So he's requesting that he be allowed to work out of a trailer in the parking lot at 115 Worcester Street from February 5th to March 1st, so that, and so that I can still service the clients and patients in the Charlton area. We will not be doing anything that requires water inside of the trailer, no surgery or dental procedures, just wellness and sick pet exams. We are willing to apply for a permit to use a porta potty if needed, or use the bathroom inside of the new building if that is allowed. Thank you for your consideration, and it's signed Dr. Rob Nicholson. Anyway, I read this. Personally, I didn't have an issue with this. It sounds like it's reasonable. You're talking a little less than a month that he'd be working out of a trailer with heat. And again, it's just visits, so he doesn't lose business. For other board members, your thoughts on this? I don't know if he needs a permit or what, but
So I obviously, we spoke about this before. I obviously have a interest in this particular veterinarian. He happens to be the veterinarian for my dog as well. I think he's a great vet. That's neither here nor there. My big concern from a health perspective is the lack of running water. So there are biologic illnesses that we treat in humans as well as animals that are not able to be cleansed with alcohol-based hand sanitizer. So if the animal has that any specific illness that is not able to be killed with alcohol-based hand sanitizer, you have to use soap and water to wash your hands. Otherwise, the next animal that is cared for, it could be transmissed. It's very clear, black and white, that there are certain organisms that alcohol-based hand sanitizer doesn't work on. So I have no problem with the trailer. I have no problem with whatever permitting needs to be done. but not having running water and not having any intention of having the accessibility of running water, moving patient to patient, even for well, and it even says in this, sick visits, not having the accessibility of running water is a little concerning to me.
So I don't know if there's any way to put in some sort of a water, of course, then you've gotta have gray water collection and so forth. I don't know what the,
Even a
The
porta
answer
potty
is-
with the running water, right? Like you can get porta potties with
Yeah.
the water tanks,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, I think there could be some kind of temporary solution with a tank. I know some of the food vendors sometimes have like a portable sink.
Mhm. Yes.
yes.
I think something
Yeah,
like
well,
that.
even travel trailers, they'll do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
You know, you got a
could.
30-gallon
Yep.
water supply and then,
Yeah.
And a gray tank and a black
gray-
tank, and
Yeah, right, gray water tank.
I would just hate to see like a infection rate in the town go rampant because, they're only using alcohol-based hand sanitizer.
Your thoughts?
So yeah, I was familiar with what was going on here. Let's face it, the guy's been in town 13 years.
Oh, yeah.
We have never had an issue with
No.
him. I don't feel like they're trying to get away with anything. They're going to a brand new facility that's just not done. However, he got to the in-between points, whatever. But so from what Jim says, the trailer's like not. This thing's nice. It's a very professional setup trailer. There'd be no surgeries in there and all that. I'm totally on board. To be honest with you, the finish line of March 1st isn't a hard day for me either. I'm saying till March 1st, plus or minus. If it takes another week or two, we're not out to get you. Like, I understand what the holdup is, and
Sure.
if it's for permit process. So I'm good with that.
Do you know if the trailer has water for washing hands?
I thought Jim said it did have water. He said it had heat, and I thought he said it had some type of water for it. But as long as, and there's many solutions out there for water, and I don't know if gloves are enough, not enough, or whatever. I don't know, but I'm on board with saying, listen, let's get some type of running water. Not for your reasons, not for the toilets or
Oh,
anything
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
I have no problem with that. I'm just really concerned about, infection control. And even if there's an opportunity, and I don't know what the status is of the new building, but like if there's running water in the building and it's accessible, like, or there's any water source, I think that's reasonable. But again, man, every infection preventionist in the world I'd get my head cut off in the medical community if I didn't say
Yeah.
something. So,
Yeah.
I just think, I agree with you. He, very reliable vet. Lots of people in the area use him. Very well-known reputation. I don't have an issue with it. I just want to make sure we're doing our
So,
part for infection
just
prevention.
talking out loud, I believe there is running water in the building because they're saying you can use the toilets in the building
Right.
during the construction. So that says there's running water. The question is, does it conflict with the construction and then this person or these
And then you're
staff
touching
coming
dirty
and going?
handles going in and
that's
out.
what we were saying. Would it interfere with like OSHA regs
Yeah, does
going
it-
in there? Yeah.
So does the construction team say, listen, stay out? Or is it located, are the lavatories located in an area where it's not bothered? We don't know.
Right.
I don't know, but let's keep them open. I say let's say yes, use the trailer, have some type of running water, whatever is acceptable to
Yeah.
you or John or your team, whatever. I don't care what it is. Probably be better than a 5-gallon bucket and that, but
Yeah.
whatever it takes to satisfy that
Yeah.
transmittal that you're talking about, I have no problem with it. And to be honest with you, March 1st, again, if it goes past it a little bit, I'm still okay with it. I just don't think this is. I could see the finish line with that building. They're there working every
Yeah,
single
they
day.
are.
So I have no problem with it whatsoever.
Can we have Jim check or you check to see if the trailer has some sort of hand
Yep.
washing capability?
Yep.
Because that would be nice.
Yes.
And Catherine can sleep better at
Yes.
night.
I think it's very good.
I didn't
I'll
even
take
think
away
of
my
that. I'm
nursing
like,
license,
okay,
right?
well, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, to speak to your point, whatever is amenable to your office is totally fine. I just,
As long as
the
they have
ability to
source.
have
Yeah.
it, I think is just a concern.
Yeah.
Agreed.
The
Okay.
hospital safety officer is having a stroke.
And, you know, not for nothing, I don't wanna keep rambling, I've been doing it all night, but we've had a restaurant in town that didn't have
Right,
water,
yeah, I heard.
and they were trying to shut them down, and this was on the western side of town, and they were trying to shut them down, and it was like, well, we didn't. And it was a public water supply issue, but then the state was using us as a leverage point to try and shut them down, but it was and it was like, at the end, I said, I don't care what they have to do. Like Jim says, well, how are they gonna wash the dishes? Yeah, they need water. How are they gonna flush the toilets? Well, they can have a porta potty outside.
Right.
With hand sanitizer. So that's their problem, but I didn't want us to shut that business down for that reason when we have other restaurants in town that don't have water and we continue to let them function.
Agreed.
It all worked out. I think we sent a nasty letter to the state, and I think they signed my name to it, but regardless, I have no problem with this. We'll get the water
Yeah,
resolved. Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's a resource for the town, right?
Yeah, for
So-
sure. What else you get, John?
Any other business unknown at the time of the posting? I don't have anything. No?
Tyler, you got anything for us?
Yeah? How's your drawing? You're running out of paper there, pal.
Must mean it's the end.
Yeah, I guess. So I guess then we're gonna have to just determine when our next Board of Health meeting is, because we've run out of exciting topics.
I'm available. I'm open.
I have a conflict on the 20th, which is 4 weeks from now. I cannot do that night.
I also cannot do that night.
Oh, good.
See, 2 for 2. It's not just your fault.
So do we go 5 weeks to the 27th?
Yeah, it would either be the 13th or the 27th.
I can do either one, but I'm inclined to just wait till the 27th.
Might give McClure Engineering that extra 2-week boost to get that print
Yeah.
to us.
Yep.
You know, I don't think anything else is super important at this time.
It's pretty quiet, right?
So
So-
27th at 6 o'clock?
I just have one question. Is that gonna inhibit any? Oh, you spoke about McClure, right? Like I know that they're just on a time frame, right?
Yeah.
So if they get the drawing in to us earlier, is that?
If
I
they-
guess is it gonna affect their overall timeline?
I don't think they're talking about starting construction.
Okay.
Yeah, not,
Okay.
not
It's
the
gonna
way
be
the others,
frost.
yeah.
I wouldn't know. You would definitely know.
I think the team's looking for us to, when they're ready to go, that we don't throw a wrench in it
Sure.
and say, hey,
Yeah.
we gotta talk about this. But if we're okay with the proposed plan from McClure, if it all makes sense, then,
Yeah,
so I think we're okay with that, Dave.
Sure.
okay. February 27th it is.
If I talk to Chris McClure and find out different or a different scenario and sounds like we need to have a powwow on
Sure.
it, I'll reach out to the office, you can let John know, and then if we decide, all right, let's bump it to an earlier date for this reason, then fine, but if not, we'll just hold
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
sounds good
All
to
right.
me.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 7:43. Thank you very much.
Good tell.